Continue here in Zechariah. Last week we made mention of the 4 messages that Zechariah gave to the children of Israel. And the first message here was a message of rebuke. I think you might have had this screen. I know you had one before it. You had one that says 4 messages, I think. Look familiar.
I got the, last thing I have is the, Israel will fulfill her mission. Before that will be, nations will be judged. And before that, the branch will hold office of king and the priests. The branch will be from Israel.
That's the last thing?
That's up, but the last one is Israel will fulfill her mission. So
Right.
that's it right there.
Okay. Well, we talked about this one, and I told you not to write anything down,
Okay,
because you already had this.
okay.
And then last week, I started off with this title of 4 messages.
So that's what we're at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Again, he's beginning his 4 messages to the children of Israel here, who had came back from captivity and failed in their responsibility of building the temple like they should have. And so God judged them for that. Habakkuk and, or excuse me, not Habakkuk, but Haggai and Zechariah both would rebuke them. But both of them were told to let the people know that God desires to bless them. God wants to bless us. That's His great desire. But the blessings don't come not because of God, it's because of us. And the first message is that message of rebuke. Did I go too fast on it? Did I go too fast? You got it?
Yeah, I just didn't get the reference to that last one that you just had up to the 4 message. Yeah, the reference is, okay.
The first message, again, like I say, was the message of rebuke to them. For the time they spent even in captivity, when they came back, they had some problems. I mean, they were not perfect people by any means while in captivity. And they had failed many, many ways while they were in captivity. And so God has to remind them of that as well, because they come out with a question about fasting. Their question was to God, should we continue to fast like we did for the last 70 years? More than likely, the fasting was because of the destruction of the temple. God requires fasting to Israel, and God requires them to observe holy days, Passover, Pentecost, Feast of Tabernacles, Yom Kippur. God requires them to hold those days as fasting, or serving, or worshiping. But the Jews came up with fasts on their own. Now, in themselves, that's not wrong. Right? I'd say, it's like Hanukkah. Hanukkah comes up December the 18th, I think it might be. Something like I read that. And goes through the 26th. That's not a biblical holiday. The Jews were never told to observe that. It's like the Feast of Purim. God didn't require them to hold that. But they did. And again, in itself, it's nothing wrong with that. It's like us worshiping Christ on Christmas Day. God doesn't require us to do that, but it's not a bad thing if it truly is worshiping Christ on Christmas Day. And so just fasting in of itself wasn't wrong, but their question here is, okay, there. reference on there, I guess I did. Verse on there. There's a question here, Zechariah 7. In verse 7:3. Verse 3. And to speak unto the priests which were in the house of the Lord of hosts, and to the prophets, saying, should I weep in the 5th month, separating myself as I have done these so many years? Then came the word of the Lord of hosts unto me, saying, speak unto all the people of the land, and to the priests, saying, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, even those 70 years, did you at all fast unto me, even to me? And so the question God is asking is, you say you fasted 7 years, but did you really fast for 70 years? Was that fast unto me? Or was it just a ritual you went through? And when you did eat, verse 6, when you did eat and when you did drink, did not you eat for yourselves and drink for yourselves? Should you not hear the word which the Lord hath cried by the former prophets, when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity, and the cities thereof round about her, when men inhabit south of the plain? So here, again, God's response there is, were you really fasting? I mean, like, people get into trouble and they go to church and they think God's going to take care of all the problems, and God doesn't, and they go to God and say, but God, I went to church for, last 6 months, or last year, and you're not answering my prayer. And God would respond audibly. He would say, when you went to church, did you do it for me? Why did you do it? Did you do it because you thought it's a good luck charm? That if you miss, you won't get my blessing, or if you go, you'll get my blessing? And that's not the case. Going to church doesn't make you right with God. Going to church doesn't guarantee you're going to be blessed. If your heart's not right, you can go every day, 7 days a week, and God's not going to bless them.
I think a lot of us put principles and preferences in place. If it's a principle, and we should put principle. The principle should be that we follow the Word of God.
Right.
But preference is when we go do something because, okay, it's my turn to do, it's my turn to usher, so let me go to church today. It's my turn to sing on the choir, so let me go. It's a preference.
Yeah, it's exactly. But we go because God commands it. But we have to have the right attitude heart.
Absolutely.
And here's the problem: ritualism. Going through the rituals, but the heart's not in it. Singing in the choir, but your heart's not right with God. Are you really ministering to anybody? You can tell the difference in singers. I've heard some singers had some great voices that I would not want to listen to at all, because I knew their testimony. We had a guy in our church years ago, was a great teacher. Everybody talk about what a great teacher that he was. And he did have a way about him teaching that was very impressive. But after a few weeks later, I found out about him and what he was doing. I mean, he ran off with some woman in the church. He had been stalking another woman for a long time. And he was a youth pastor in another church when he came to our church. And, of course, we didn't know anything about that. And after that, I don't care what he had to say, I couldn't listen to it. Even if it was right, I didn't get anything from it, because the heart attitude wasn't there. When it comes to the Bible, you have to know Jesus Christ in order to get your message really through to people in the right way. God says that he requires mercy, not sacrifice. Yes, the Old Testament sacrifices were required by God. There's no doubt about that. For 1,500 years of the Old Testament, God gave him very strict rules and regulations concerning sacrifices. Before that, they offered sacrifices, but when the law began, for the last 1,500 years of the Old Testament, God was very strict. Remember how many laws there were?
613.
Yeah, and that they couldn't keep. But God gave them the law not for salvation, but he gave them the law to show that they were lost. And so the ritual meant nothing. And I always think of David when it comes to this, because it's such a perfect illustration when David in Psalm 51 goes to God and tells God, offering a sacrifice, thou desirest not. I mean, if David stopped right there, we'd have a hard time with that. Think, well, David, that's a false statement because God did require sacrifice, so why are you saying he didn't? Well, he goes on to say, but a broken heart, broken contrite spirit, O God, thou wilt not despise. Then a couple verses later, what did he say? Then will I offer up the burnt offering. So, God, I know you don't want the sacrifice, you want the right attitude of the heart. But with the right attitude of the heart comes what? The sacrifice. So that's what God is requiring there. It's the right attitude of the heart, not rituals of the heart. But again, sacrifice was important only if the heart was right. It's like going to church. The heart needs to be right. If you want to go to church and be blessed, you have to go with the right attitude. Because you can go to church with the wrong attitude and it would be one of the greatest sermons there ever was, and you won't get nothing. Matthew talks about fasting, and I know we talked about this in other classes as well, and earlier on here, but more when you fast, be not as the hypocrites of sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear unto men to fast. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when thou fastest, anoint thine head, wash thy face, that thou appear not unto men to fast, but as thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. So, is it important for you to get an answer to prayer? Well, it should be. Right? But you have to make sure that the prayer is not for selfish reasons. I would never fast for a new car. Would I pray for one? Yeah, I pray for a new car. After me and my wife first got married, she was in the car, actually right after we had our first child, and she was in the car going somewhere and the car broke in. And I felt so horrible about that. I mean, and I said, God, please let me be able to afford a new car or a new car that won't break down, because I don't want to have my wife ever have to go through that again. And God has always allowed us to have a nicer car. She's always had a nicer car. She's always, if we ever bought something new, she went to her. And I've been extremely happy about that God has supplied. Not always brand new. Most cars we ever bought are a couple years old, because you get a better price for it. But again, it was because I wanted to make sure she was safe. And so I don't think it was a selfish motive for me to pray for a newer vehicle. I want to pray for something that's reliable. My cars have never been reliable. But now they are. The Jeeps are very good. I used to have a Volkswagen that for a couple of years I had to push it to start it. So where I went, I made sure I parked on a hill. And in my yard, had a little hill. I had to go back in my backyard to start it, and I can make it, whatever. But I'm okay with that. My wife didn't have to drive it. So God has blessed and answered that prayer. I don't think it was a selfish prayer. I think it was a prayer of necessity, and God answered it. Then came to him the disciples of John, saying, "Why do we in the trying to think something else. Saying, why do we and the Pharisees fast oft, but thy disciples fast not? Jesus said to them, can the children of the bridegroom mourn? By the chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them. So basically Jesus said, as long as I'm with them, there's no need for them to fast. But when I go away, there will be a need. And of course, Acts chapter 1, Jesus ascended up in heaven. So Acts chapter 1 is when fasting began for all people, including the church. Acts chapter 2, church began. And so that is a part of the ministry, is to fast. Whether you know anybody else fast or not, whether your church fasts or not, it doesn't make any difference. There are times when you will need to fast. And we've talked a lot about fasting, what fast is. Isaiah 58, very important passage, of course, on fasting. I've read it before, but right there's the reference on the top, so the same thing's on the screen. But wherefore have we fasted, say they, and thou seest not? What they saying? Say, God, we fasted. Fasted. This is in the book of Isaiah, so it's way before the captivity, but this was going on in Israel when the northern kingdom was taken captive. And so the children here say, well, Lord, we've been fasting, but you're not answering our prayer. Why is that, Lord? And God goes on to say, behold, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure. Exact all your labors. You go around business usually. You say you're fasting, but fasting is not abstaining. Fasting is doing something. You ought to be out there serving God in some capacity, whether it's feeding people or giving shelter, helping somebody, neighbors, whatever it may be. You don't go around doing your own thing. When you're fasting, you don't mow your yard. You might mow your neighbors.
So it's doing something for someone else.
It's always something for somebody else. Never for yourself. Never for yourself. Behold, you fast for strife and debate. You fasting because somebody did you wrong and now you want me to kill them, God said. Is that really what you want to fast about? For strife and because you upset with somebody? No. Smite with the fist of wickedness. Said, you shall not fast as you do this day to make your voice be heard on high. Is it such a fast that I have chosen for a day for a man to afflict his soul, to bow down his head as a bulrush and spread sackcloth and ashes under him? God said, is that the fast? Do I want you to do that? And I want you to afflict your soul or bring troubles on yourself or sit there with sackcloth and ashes there on the public street so everybody can see you? I said, is that what I require you to do? Is that part of a fast? And the answer is no. I mean, it sounds almost right at the beginning, a day for man to afflict his soul, but it's people just sitting there, oh, poor miserable me, I'm nothing, I can't do anything, I'm just out here fasting, y'all look at me, I'm fasting, see how spiritual I am? And y'all's not, because you're not fasting. And that's what people do, look at what we do. Our church has a Super Bowl party, usually, last couple of years we had, but and we did it for years before. And I know a guy that would criticize us for that. Said it's absolutely wrong to do that. That churches should never do that. We've had several people get saved during those Super Bowl services. Because at halftime we have a message. Sometimes it might be a video of a Christian athlete who gives his testimony, but we'll do something like that. Well, the church that I was entering at a while back, this guy went to that church. And I never got mad at him for not liking what we do. But there's 2 times he told me, I won't be here next Sunday. I said, oh yeah? He said, yeah, take my son up to see the Steelers play. I'm thinking, okay, he missed a whole day of church to see a football game. And we didn't miss anything. We didn't, I mean, we had morning service, we had the evening service, we had time fellowship, and yet he thinks he's more spiritual because, oh, you had the Super Bowl party. And if he'd have thought of it, it'd been spiritual. But that's the way people are. It's sad. God goes on to say, you don't spread sackcloth and ashes and do it out there in public. Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush and spread, wilt thou call this a fast and accept the day of the Lord? Then God says, okay, is not this the fast that I've chosen? So verse 6 on down, God says, you want to know what a fast is? This is a fast. Right? To do the right thing. Wilt thou call this fast? You messed up here. Verse 6, there it is. Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, undo the heavy burdens, let the oppressed go free, break every yoke, unequally yoked together with people. Is it not to give or to deal thy bread to the hungry? Thou shalt bring the poor that are cast out to thy house. God does not require you to have poor people move into your house. But what he's saying is you give them shelter, you give them food. Bring the poor cast out, and when thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, give them clothing. Okay? It's a time of doing something for somebody. All day long, and I don't think it's a day when you go to work. It's a day you take off. I know y'all don't retired now, but you couldn't fast and cut hair all day long. First of all, it'd be hard to be spiritual, I think, with some of your customers, probably. Talking about everybody and everything that's going on. But for any of us, you don't go about your normal daily business, but you take that day, set it aside. Okay, this day that I'm going to serve God, I'm going to volunteer at the hospital, or volunteer at the rest home, or volunteer at the soup kitchen, or volunteer at the church, or whatever it might be. But today's the day I'm going to spend serving God by serving others, by giving food or whatever it might be. But it's never about me, it's always about God. And the Lord shall guide thee continually, verse 11 says, and satisfy thy soul in drought, and make thy fat bones, and thou shalt be like a watered garden. God says, I will answer those. Now, remember, the answer is not always what we want. Yeah. And that's why when you pray, you never tell God how to answer the prayer. Just have Him answer it. Lord, you know what's best. I don't have a clue. And so if you answer this in whatever way that you see fit, and help me to see that answer, and help me to delight in that answer. If the answer is not the way that I wanted it, yeah, well, God, let me be content in what sort of state I am. You know, that's what Paul said in Philippians chapter 4. No matter what's going on in my life, if things are all falling apart, I learned how to be content. He said, I've learned how to be abased. I learned how to abound. I learned how to be full. I've learned how to be hungry. I've learned how to have. I've learned how to suffer need. With all these things, what I really learned in that, I've learned how to be content. And that's what people want out of life, is to be content. We all want that. The person who strives for multi-million, he wants to be content. That's why he does it. So if we can have contentment without having to have all these worldly things, we win. You know, and God can give us contentment now. And so there's the fasting. There's for fasting.
It doesn't say anything about turning the plate upside down.
No.
I was listening, I was waiting because I was listening very hard for you to say something about food and restrain from food. It doesn't say anything about
It does. I mean, obviously that's a part of it, because the word fast means, you know, we have breakfast because we're breaking a fast. By sleeping all night, we don't eat. You know. And so, yeah, that's a part, but that's the littlest part of it, is that because you don't eat, what do you do with the food? You feel hungry. And so it is a time of self-sacrifice, but never to harm yourself. You don't fast if you have medical issues. You know, some people cannot fast, but they can still do the other things. They can still volunteer, they can still go this and do that, all these other things. So yeah, I believe God honors that as a fast, because that's what He wants, is a right attitude of the heart. The food and drink is not important. You know, but how many people make that the main issue of the fast?
too many.
Yeah, and they even talk about it's a spiritual diet. No, it's not. I mean, it's not a way of losing weight. It's not any of that. It's about submitting yourself to God. Second message is a message of remembrance. God wants them to remember. Remember what Zechariah's name means.
God remembers.
God remembers. Where the Lord came into Zechariah saying, "Thus speak the Lord of hosts, execute true judgment, show mercy and compassion, every man to his brother, oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor. Let none of you imagine evil against his brother in your heart." You know, I mean, even the thoughts are wrong, remember. Not that you do it, it's just you think about it. God said, I don't want you even thinking about getting the best of somebody. But what y'all do, God said, when I told you to do that, is what you refused to hearken. Pulled away the shoulder. No, I don't want to hear it. No. You know, and that's exactly what the people were doing with God. Stopped their ears that they should not hear, yet they made their hearts as adamant stone, lest they should not hear the law and the words which the Lord of hosts has sent in His Spirit. The Lord's Spirit didn't show up very well. By the former prophets. Therefore came a great wrath from the Lord of hosts. Therefore it's come to pass that as He cried, and they would not hear, So they cried. And I said, I won't hear. It's pretty sad. I said, I cried to them and told them. They didn't listen to what I had to say. Now they're in trouble. They're going to call to me. I'm not going to listen to them. I want God to listen to me.
Me too.
I mean, you know, think of how important that is. Israelites' relationship to others. God reminded of that. I think people really believe we have a right to hate our enemy or a right to destroy our enemy. Remember the flying scroll, swearing on one side and stealing on the other. Sins against God, sins against man. So if somebody's done you wrong and you try to get the best of them, you're doing wrong. And unfortunately, we live in a world where we think it's right to get even with people. Well, they deserve it. That's what we say. Well, that makes it okay then. They deserve it, that makes it okay. No.
I pray for them.
You do. You know, I think I've told you all this before. I was working in a place years ago, and there was a couple of Christians who worked there, and I truly believe they're Christians. It was in an office space, and I came in on the other side of the cubicle, so they didn't see me come in. Then I heard them talking. I didn't think much about that. Then come out there talking about me. And saying some things that just really were very hurtful because, and first of all, they weren't true. And I get really mad and I went to go over and say something. I thought, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And I went home that night and I prayed. Lord, I prayed you to reveal to them what they said, help them to understand the truth and help them see the right way. And I mean, all through the night, because I just could not sleep. I mean, I prayed and I prayed about it and I lay back down, couldn't sleep, so I prayed about it again. It seemed like I just prayed for, on and off for most of the night. And it was about probably 6:37 in the morning. I realized that the person that was wrong was me, it wasn't them. I should have been praying, Lord, help me to forgive and help me to forget about all that, because it doesn't really matter in the long run. And when I did that, then I got the peace of God. But I thought I should be praying that God fix them. And I should have been praying God fix me.
Right.
Help me to handle it in the right way.
God was saying, look at the attitude of your heart.
Yeah. And then it's easy for us to do is to find other people's problems. I mean, I can point out any one of y'all's sins right now. But mine? Oh, no. I'm not doing anything wrong. Zechariah calls them to remember here. Give the second message. To remember what? Well, the requirements. What's God's requirement? Well, justice, kindness, compassion. You've ever been driving down the road and somebody pulls right out in front of you or around the stop sign, whatever, and it just irritates you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Now, you ever been driving, not going to paying attention and accidentally pull out in front of somebody?
Yes.
And you think what?
I am so
Oh,
sorry.
I'm so sorry, y'all. But we see it completely different, don't we?
Yes.
Because we get upset, and that person in that car, probably maybe everyone would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you." You know, we all lose track sometimes. I mean, I've done it. I was on a motorcycle on North Point Boulevard, or whatever it is, North Point Boulevard, whatever it is, North Point. And I was front in line there, and cars were going, and I didn't think nothing about it. And all of a sudden, I just took off across the road. My life was still red.
Ooh.
And I don't know what I was thinking, because I mean, I just took off. I don't know if I saw another car moving out of the corner of my eye, and I decided to move too. But, I mean, I could easily been killed.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's not what I meant to do, you know. But we all get sidetracked. And we ought to try to keep that in mind, you know. Zechariah 7, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah saying, thus speak the Lord of hosts, execute true judgment. True judgment. It means we really figure things out, not just, well, I think that's what happened. But we make sure we know mercy, compassion. Again, oppress not others. Father, the stranger, the poor. Don't imagine evil. Their response, I don't want to hear it. Stopped up the ears. I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. I've already made my decision. And what happens when their heart becomes hardened? The more we do that, the more we disobey God and try to seek vengeance, the harder our heart becomes.
Like a horse that pulls sideways. Wow.
Yeah. Mm. Well, I've seen people do that. I mean, I've seen people pull the shoulder. Somebody says something, I'm like, they refuse to hug him, pulled away the shoulder, stopped the ears. Again, they should not hear. They made their hearts as adamant stone. Lest they should hear the law. Because they don't want to hear it. Why? Because they know what the truth is. But they want to feel the way they want to feel. And remember Proverbs 28:9, he that turneth his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be an abomination. So if there's a grudge you have against somebody, you're not going to listen to them. So the hearts became as an adamant stone, that they shouldn't hear the law. I know what I'm supposed to do, I just don't want to do it, but you can't pray it. Condemnation. What happens when we do that? The children of Israel here, remember their circumstances. They just came out of captivity. 70 years in captivity, 70 years without a temple. Now they come back and they start building a temple, then they stop, start doing their own things, and God warns them about what could happen. And that is, first of all, no answer prayer, but also you could be taken back into captivity. I mean, you would think after serving 70 years in prison, in a sense, knowing that you're guilty, right? And you don't act like you're innocent for those 70 years, but you know you're guilty and you come back out, and God says, I can send you right back into it. You know, so I can empty out the land again. Remember what happened to your fathers? What happened to them? Well, they killed the prophets. They failed to listen. What happened to them? Well, they went into captivity. What are you doing? Same thing. All right, let's take a break.